Good evening and welcome to the April meeting of the Salem Kaiser Transit Board. This evening's agenda includes two presentations, one on our financial report and another on the legislative session review for the 2018 session. We'll have a period of public comment followed by our consent calendar, which includes the minutes of the March 12th meeting or work session, the March 22nd board meeting, and some routine service changes scheduled for May. We have several action items, action pending depending on outcome of executive session discussion regarding approval of the ATU labor contract, resolution 2018-02, property designation for South Salem Transit Center project, and resolution 2018-3, adopt bylaws for the statewide transportation improvement fund advisory committee, and 4, appointment of board subcommittee for the Highway 99E corridor planning project. Then we'll have some information items which will include the summary of the 2018 public engagement report for Better Chariots, and then we'll have various reports from the board and management. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. And we have some guests with us this evening, Boy Scout Troop 187 from Salem, and we're going to ask them to lead us in the flag pledge this evening.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I notice a familiar face back there?
And we want to thank you for participating in our meeting this evening.
Don't we have a familiar face there?
Yes.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Tim Reedy. I'm the database administrator. I've been with Chariots for about 20 years. So I'm currently the Scoutmaster of Troop 187.
Too late.
For the TV camera? For TV.
Thank you, because it's a good service for the community, and I just wanted to get you credit as a Chariots employee for doing that, so thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements or changes to the agenda?
Yeah, it's coming.
We're going to pull one item from the agenda, which is H.3, because there were some changes in the state's bylaws for this group, and we need to make a couple adjustments. So rather than adopting it, we'll wait a month and come through. And in fact, I'll have Ellen explain it.
Sure. So if you remember during the work session, we reviewed them. And so one of the things we didn't have complete was to define a high percentage of low-income individuals. And we're still struggling with that. We've reached out to our partner agencies, TriMet and Lane, and they're still struggling with that. And then also, as part, what was not intended by ODOT was to, they have the formula fund rules out for public comment, and then following that down the road was going to be the inter-community and discretionary, but they rolled all that up into the same public hearing, so those rules will all be official at the same time. And there's some changes in the bylaws that the advisory committee has to do as part of the inter-community and discretionary. So instead of adopting them and then coming back and making some revisions, we'll just do it all at once. By not doing it, it doesn't slow down the formation of the committee, which will be our primary charge the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Any other changes or adjustments to the agenda? Okay. Linda, would you take attendance for us? Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to our presentations, and I'll ask our general manager to introduce the first one.
So for our first presentation, I'll ask our Director of Finance, Al McCoy, to make the introductions.
Thank you. Good evening, President Krebs, members of the board. Tonight we have Ryan Pasquarella here, CPA and shareholder with Grove Mueller and Swain. He will present the FY17 audit report and answer any questions you may have regarding the
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening. As Al said, my name is Ryan Pasquarella. I work with Grove Mueller and Swank, and we perform the independent audit for the district. You should have received 3 different documents from us. First one is this lovely, it's the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR. So I will probably use that acronym multiple times. It's much easier than saying the full name, but that is this document here. There is also a federal compliance report that was provided to you. It's actually probably the very back of the CAFR. It's actually an independent document, but for logistic purposes, I think it's easier to keep it in here essentially. And then there was also a letter that was provided to you. It's called the governance letter, and really it's the communication from the independent auditors directly to the board. And it's just like a 3-page letter on our letterhead. Basically, it's going to summarize what I'm going to talk about this evening. The letter really is a way for us to communicate, but since we're doing a presentation, we'll just talk about it instead at that point. So, the audit is required annually for 2 reasons. One, the state of Oregon requires it, and then also the district receives a significant amount of federal funding. And once you get over spending $750,000 in federal funds during a fiscal year, you end up required to have an audit and a federal compliance audit. That's the second document that we're talking about there. What I'm going to do is go through the CAFR a little bit, just kind of point out some of the sections of it. This report is actually for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2017. So the information is a little bit older at this point. I mean, you're pretty close to finishing up your next fiscal year at this point. So I won't get into a whole lot of numbers in here unless you have specific questions about the stuff that you've read in here. I'm happy to talk about it. But really, I think I want to focus more on the federal compliance audit and some of that information. This document, as you go back through it, it gets more and more into detail as you go. It really starts out with what's called the transmittal letter, and it's a letter that is actually written by the district, and it's just an overview of the district. You know, ridership information, changes that the district has gone through or anticipating going forward. Very good narrative. And that's actually the Roman numeral section that you're going to see in here. And it starts on about the 3rd or 4th page of the actual document there. So short, concise, really gets to the point of what the district is. My portion more starts once you get to the actual numbered pages, page number 1 in there. And it's a letter from my firm. It's a 3-page letter. And basically what it says is that the financial information contained in this document that we're providing reasonable assurance that this information meets generally accepted accounting principles. Which basically means we didn't find any significant errors or anything in this document. We will talk more about how we finally ended up with this outcome of the document. This isn't where the numbers started initially. There was a lot of work to get the numbers, so they actually did meet generally accepted accounting principles. But these are the final numbers, and they do meet those principles, in our opinion. Okay. So once you get past our 3-page letter, there's a section called Management Discussion and Analysis, yet another section that management is actually putting together. And this gets into the financial side. It's really a comparative of what's happened over the past 3 years for the district. So you can kind of see some of the ups and downs with the revenues, with if there's significant changes in capital assets. It's just a way for management to discuss the changes that happen there. And it's helpful because you have nice tables in there that show you the 3 years all next to each other, so you can really see what is happening with those numbers there. On page 5, you will see there's the balance sheet essentially for the 3 years. And so you can see that your assets are staying relatively even over those 3 years, right around $60 million. Your liabilities fluctuated some, started at about 11 million, up to close to 15, down to 13. I'll talk about that a little bit and where that's coming from, but really it's just a good overview of what the district's financial position, how it has changed. Page 8 in the document is what's called the Statement of Net Position. This is actually the information that we have audited. So it's in a lot more detail than you saw in that management discussion and analysis page. On the left page are really the assets, the right page are the liabilities. So definitely more detailed than what you saw before. If you're looking at this, really if you look at page 8 there on the assets, you will see there's a whole section of current assets. In my mind, those are really what I'm going to say like are tangible assets for the district. Really the whole asset side there. Tangible assets. There's accounts receivable. We can see when that money is coming in. We know that that money is owed to you. There's cash sitting there. We can look at bank statements. We can see that the district has that cash. When you get down to the bottom of page 8, there's that deferred outflow of resources. That's really not a tangible item. That is an estimate that relates to actually your net pension, to your 2 pension plans that you have. It's an estimation of current amounts you owe related to future payments. It's an actuarial study that is done. So top of that, very easy to understand information. Bottom of page 8, all estimates. Your current liabilities on page 9, same thing. Very tangible information. You know what money is owed. You know what vacation employees have earned. That's where you're going to get your $3.5 million in the current year and your $4.2 in the prior year. When you look at non-current, that's that net pension liability thing again. It's an estimate based on an actuarial evaluation that is done. So it's not that you are paying that money out today. It's really present value of future payments that you're going to make over the life of people working, essentially. So it's very interesting that how there's a combination of things that really hit this balance sheet here. The only other statement I really want to talk about was page 10, and that's your income statement. One nice part about the transit district is the way that this information is being presented. If you've ever seen a financial statement for a city or for a county, you have got column after column after column of all these different buckets. The district reports under a different model, essentially. It's a special purpose government, which really means that this is being presented more as if it was a commercial business, just a business, essentially. So you're going to see an income statement, you're just going to see a basic balance sheet. Much simpler than, well, City of Salem's CAFR, if you happen to open that one up. The one interesting thing about the way that the income statement is presented here on page 10, you will see you have operating revenues and operating expenses at the top, which lead to either your operating gain or loss. So for 2017, you had about $6.2 million in operating revenue, and you had about $44 million in operating expense. So clearly, operating revenue is fares that you're charging, basically what you're getting from customers related to the operations that you're doing. So what that really means is that you are really reliant on federal and state assistance, property taxes, in order to really balance the budget for the district. So that's why this is kind of set up this way. All the operating up top, and then you've got your non-operating property taxes, all the other funding in there that really show that you're not that far behind, essentially. But that is, we're required to actually present it that way. That's the way that GASB has required it. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm going to talk about in the CAFR itself. As part of the financial audit, we also are required to perform some testing over Oregon revised statutes, what's called minimum standards. And what that means is we look at your budget process, we look at when you're doing any type of procurements, are you meeting Oregon's requirements for documentation, getting multiple bids? We look at where your money is it sitting in accounts that the state, basically is there collateral against it? Is it fully collateralized? That type of thing. So there's a list of things that we do annually. The only thing that we noted in our testing for the year was there was expenditures in excess of appropriations in a couple of your funds, the general fund and the special transportation fund. Both had expenditures exceed the appropriations, and probably a lot of that's just to do with the fact it wasn't noticed probably until after the fiscal year was over, and it's a little late to fix it at that point. So page 66 and 67 in the CAFR here, that is our state compliance report. The bottom of that first page, that bottom paragraph, that basically just says that there were over expenditures in there. And there are budget to actual reports in here that will demonstrate that for you. What I really want to talk to you about this evening is we'll say the federal compliance report. So annually, we are required to select certain funding streams of the district and perform compliance testing over them to make sure that you are meeting either ODOT or FTA's requirements related to them, and also to have good internal controls over those compliance areas to make sure that the district stays in compliance with those areas. So the testing of the programs themselves, we did not have any non-compliance related to it, but the finding that we did have this year related to the financial preparation side and really creating this document here. There was some turnover in your finance department, as I'm sure you're all aware of at this point. I want to thank Al for, I don't know if it was your second or third day on the job. I walk into your office, second day, I walk into his office and say, hey, we need to have this document done in a week. What can you do to help us get it done? And there was a lot of work that was done just to get it finalized, so thank you for that one. But what really happened when we came out to start our audit, they're just the people that were in charge of getting ready for the audit really just didn't have the experience with the district to make sure that your ending numbers were accurate. And by that, I mean the amount that you recorded as owed to you by FTA and ODOT was not accurate. The amount of capital assets in your financial records was not accurate. And we found all this stuff by doing sampling testing that we normally do as part of the audit procedure. So the audit went for multiple months. Generally, when we come and look at the numbers in this document, we're on site for 4 days, maybe 5 days, and we're done and we get through it all. This was multiple month process of here's what we found, please look into it, see what modifications need to be made to the numbers so that we can look at it again. And it was just a whole lot of back and forth with it. And like I said, it really related to just, the people tasked with doing the year-end work just didn't have the experience to do it. What I will say is that, I mentioned that we didn't have any findings on the federal compliance side. You have some very strong, accounting staff in that finance department. You've got people with a lot of experience, working through, paying invoices, the payroll process that's there. I mean, the day-to-day stuff, the staff know what to do, it gets done, it's getting documented consistently. The issues really came up related to just adjusting all the year-end balances to where they needed to be to create this document here, essentially. So it's not completely terrible, but, really, there just needs to be more experience, at the accountant level, and hopefully Al is going to make sure that that gets done going forward. Our finding in here is actually so I'm in the federal compliance reports, that very back section, page 8 in there. It says financial statement findings, finding 2017-001. So it starts on page 8, goes on to page 9, essentially. This finding is what's called a material weakness. There are 3 levels of deficiencies, findings that we can have. Lowest level is a control deficiency, which really just means, yeah, nothing's going to be significantly incorrect, but we've got some recommendations for you to kind of shore up your processes. Second level up is a significant deficiency, which means that either that issue or that with a combination of other issues could cause some material errors in your financial report. And then there's what's called a material weakness, which basically means this item by itself would cause material issues with your financial statements if there weren't procedures, if changes weren't made. On the bottom of page 8 there, you will see I've listed out the types of changes that had to be made based on when we got the initial numbers for the audit and then when we got the final numbers for the audit. There are some very significant, some very large changes in there that needed to be made in order for this to meet generally accepted accounting principles. So we've written this finding as a material weakness, which is the highest level of a finding that we can have, essentially. So what does this mean for the district going forward? Well, first of all, it means Al is doing as much as he can to make sure it never happens again. That's correct. Yeah, but what it also means is that for next year's audit, actually for the next 2 years' audit, the district will no longer be considered a low-risk auditee in how we select the work that we do related to the federal compliance report. You're going to be a high risk, which means that instead of us auditing 20% of your federal expenditures, we have to audit 40% of your federal expenditures for the next 2 years, which generally means we have to select new funding streams, more work, more time on site, and that holds for the 2 years, assuming that there are no more material issues or anything, then you can go back to low risk at that point with it. So there definitely will be some more work related to it in the next year. So definitely not the normal presentation that I give. I mean, a lot of you have heard either myself or Chuck Swank give this presentation in prior years. Normally we're just like, hey, yeah, it went great, see you later, we're out the door. So this year, clearly, there was some changes that happened, and so not quite as clean of an audit as it has been in the past. But I'm really here to answer questions. If you have questions for me, I'm sure Al would be willing to answer questions too if you have those.
Director Kelly?
Some government entities are now required by new audit rules to report when tax revenues have been forgiven for certain entities. We don't collect our taxes, the county does, so would those be listed in the county audit?
They are actually listed in your audit. There is a new, let's see if I can find the page in here. There we go, with page 35 of the CAFR. It's the tax abatement in there. And so really what the district needs to report in there is, first of all, taxes that the district decided to abate or that another organization decided to abate that does impact you as well. A lot of the times it's really other governmental entities setting up enterprise zones or something like that, and it does have an impact on you. So you will see that giant $58,000 number there. And in the grand scheme of really what your CAFR is, it's not a large number for what the district's portion is.
But so then this doesn't include, however, the urban renewal dollars that we do not get because of the city of Salem.
That is not the urban renewal side. This is strictly just the district's portion of property taxes that was abated. The city of Salem's and the URA has their own, that would be separate. Within here, you do have you do have some abated related to what the urban renewal is doing. It's just not the whole urban renewal portion of it, it's just your portion of it.
No, but I don't even think that that's included because our portion of the urban renewal is close to $500,000 now.
In one fiscal year or over a length of time?
Yes.
Okay. This information is coming from the county. So I might, if you would like, I can investigate with the county.
No, I just wondered whether we had to report it. So this is the other, this is when other entities give away taxes for whatever various reasons they're doing.
Either you or other entities, yes.
Okay. well, we were never consulted, so. But the urban renewal is not included then, because
It does not
that
look like
may
it.
not be
You're right, it does not
included
look
in those requirements. Okay.
Director Rogers?
Oh,
Just one question. So the discrepancies in here, you think can be attributed more to people who weren't as qualified as it probably should have been versus something criminal going on behind the scenes? I mean, that's what I was getting
yeah,
from
yeah,
you.
yeah, and very valid question. And really, so the individual that was tasked with helping us figure this out, she had not been in this position very long. She came in right at close to the end of the fiscal year because the two other finance people had moved on to other positions. This was a temp person that came in trying to figure out how to adjust everything at year end. So it really has to do with experience with the district, accounting knowledge, not the fraudulent side at that point.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Sounds stressful.
Other questions or comments?
yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
We're a little disappointed
Yeah.
that we have to do a better job next year, but we have Al on board now, and I think he's
Absolutely.
going to do a very good job of
Yes.
pulling it all together, so.
Yes.
Thank you.
And like I said, he helped us tremendously getting it finished up there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
And I'll call on our general manager to introduce our next.
So I'll ask our representatives from CFM to come on up and present our fiscal, or 2018 legislative session overview.
Good evening. My name is Dale Penn. I'm the partner in charge of state affairs at CFM, which represents you both at the state and the federal level. I've got Zach Reeves with me, Government Affairs Associate. We both work on Salem-Keizer Transit issues in the building, and so we're going to be jointly tag teaming the presentation here. So that's an old photo. That's the first thing I'll mention. I definitely need to change that. But that is your state affairs team. Myself, Tess, and Zach. And then on the federal side, you've got Joel Rubin, Kirby Garrett, and Michael Skipper. And the three of them, I want to make sure that they get a shout out here. Recently, they were able to achieve a strong victory with a FTA grant of $2.5 million, a bus and bus facilities grant to purchase 6 new CNG buses for Salem-Keizer Transit. One of the things I'll make sure to mention is that out of all of the FTA grants given across the nation, only 2 of them were for Oregon. So Salem-Keizer Transit is very lucky and very well served on the federal side with Joel and his team out there. So just want to make sure that we get that on the record. So if he's viewing that, good job, Joel. So I wanted to do a quick 2018 overview. When we first started doing annual sessions quite a few years ago, the main goal was on budget fixes and on small policy issues. And I think we've kind of gone far afield on that now. As you'll see today, this legislative session, which went from February 5th to March 3rd, ended a week early, but in that time tackled a huge host of issues. Chiefly among them, or the expected number one issue, was going to be determined by Ballot Measure 101, which was a January ballot measure, special election ballot measure. That was effectively a referral of the Medicaid funding package legislators passed the year before. If we did not, or if the voters of Oregon did not support that, we would have gone into the 2018 short session with a $200 to $300 million budget hole that we would have been expected to fill. And in 30 days or 35 days or however long we were going to be there in the building, that's a tall order. That's a lot to figure in 30 days. So like I said, we ended on March 3rd, a week early. There was strong support on Measure 101. It passed pretty easily. And despite Medicaid funding continuing to be an issue in 2019 and beyond, that was something that we did not have to worry about going into the session. So instead, what many expected the largest conversation to be about was on cap and invest. There was several ambitious proposals from Democratic leadership to tackle this issue over the 30 days that we were in session. It will definitely return in 2019. One of the interesting comparisons between transportation, and this cap and invest idea is that the very successful transportation package that passed last year was started with a joint committee that went around the state for about a year and met dozens of times with constituents all over the state to learn what their transportation issues are, and they brought those ideas back to the legislature in a bipartisan manner and passed the transportation package. The Joint Interim Committee on Carbon Reduction is trying to do the same thing. So very much taking a page out of the successful transportation package in order to pass that. It's going to be a heavily contentious issue over the next year, and we will be monitoring that very closely. The other thing is the tax code reconnect. So there were some changes late last year to our tax system in America, and resulted in some, many states began looking at the impact those tax changes are going to have on their citizens. And so Senate Bill 1528 sought to address some of those concerns by disconnecting certain portions of Oregon's tax code with the federal tax code, especially around deductions for pass-through businesses like LLCs, S-corps, et cetera. This narrowly passed out of both chambers. It was a heavily political issue, and what ended up happening was, because the governor felt like, in response to concerns, the bill did not do enough to address small business issues or small business concerns, she has now called a special session for May 21st, which is next month. There have been, I think, 40 to 45 different special sessions in Oregon, and the last one was in 2013, where we are going to be, where she wants to make changes to a particular bill and a particular tax code change that was made in 2013, small business tax credit issue. So that's going to be a huge issue over the next month. You're going to hear quite a bit about it in the press. We will be monitoring that during session as well, or during what I call legislative days in May and the special session on May 21st. The danger here is that, will they be able to keep the conversation on just a single issue, or will others get dragged into that as well? That's a big concern right now. Another couple big issues that happened this year, we had a document recording fee increase in order to pay for affordable housing, which is a huge issue around the state. We also had a particularly controversial bill that received national attention around closing the intimate partner loophole for gun ownership. Individuals who have a domestic violence or stalking charge are prohibited from owning firearms. So we had quite a bit in a short session, in a short amount of time, quite a bit more from the small budget changes and policy issues that I think everyone expected this short sessions to have. So go to legislative priorities for Salem-Keizer Transit. I'll try to move pretty quickly through these. We have a couple different slides for each one, but mainly the transportation package, which was 2017, in the 2017 session, so House Bill 2017 in the 2017 session. House Bill 4059 is the version or the policy update bill that went through this session, so our main goal, of course, was monitoring that. The governance change bill, Senate Bill 1536, which we'll spend some time talking about, and then a perennial issue that we consistently are tackling is the transferability of existing and expiring energy incentive tax credits. So let's talk for a minute about 4059. So House Bill 2017, the transportation package, established a joint committee on transportation which met this session to address transportation and transit issues that rose in the interim. So that is the bill that we met with during session repeatedly. There are several members of the board who attended hearings this year as well as last year, and I want to thank you all for doing that. Having board members show interest, arrive in the Capitol, represent the issue, represent Salem-Keizer Transit is very important. So thank you very much. Alan also has been participating in a grueling RAC or Rules Advisory Committee process as the STIF money or the Transportation Investment Fund dollars have been determined how they're going to be allocated. And nobody expects that Iraq is a fun way to spend an afternoon. So he gets a lot of acclaim for sitting through all of those. The major transportation or transit components of this transportation package implementation bill are mainly around the distribution of STIF funds, so mainly monitoring and protecting against any kind of sweeping of the funds or expectations of allocating those funds elsewhere. We also had an issue pop up. One of the advocates, one of the largest transit advocates in the state is Representative Katty McEwen from Southern Oregon. She is the co-chair of the Joint Committee on Transportation, which addressed or created House Bill 4059 and discussed the issue. She serves as co-chair along with Senator Lee Beyer from the Springfield, Eugene area. She had sought a way to secure additional funding streams for student transportation. And I think her initial proposal would allocate 1% of the dedicated transit funding of the STIF to the Department of Education for distribution to school districts for student transportation, including the purchase of activity vehicles. I think every transit entity, stakeholder around the table is in agreement that student transportation is somewhere we need to invest our dollars. But I think there is some tremendous reluctance to start diverting dollars from a funding source that hasn't even been allocated yet. The fear was that the transit funding stream was going to soon turn into the lottery, or a version of the lottery where originally created for economic development, but very little of the money actually goes towards that now. So that's an ongoing concern we're going to have to contend with going forward. So CFM, Allen, and others and other transit advocates met regularly with advocates and stakeholders from the education community, with Representative McEwen and others, to try to revise the proposal, and eventually ended up with a proposal that would require transit districts to spend 1% of the money for student transportation, but keeping the money within ODOT. And I think the current expected plan for the STIF allocation for Salem-Keizer Transit will meet and exceed that substantially. So Salem-Keizer Transit and transit advocates are ongoing supporters of Representative McEwen, appreciate her hard work, and look forward to working with her in the future on this and many other issues. The last issue is the implementation date change. So 4059 included a provision moving up the implementation date of the transportation package to July 1 of 2018. This allows transit districts to start investing in some of these projects that meet the requirements of the STIF allocation funding a little bit earlier. And so that was a key component of the bill, and one we were happy to see put forward. So I wanted to just take a pause here for a second. That's a large information dump. And if there's any questions.
Yes,
Yes,
Director
Marcia.
Kelly.
And this isn't exactly a question, but when you were talking about the proposal and the connection to the federal, part of the situation is the Tax Institute called out Oregon when they were discussing their suggestions to the state for connecting to the new tax code. Oregon already has a pass-through, which is what you talked about. Oregon already has a pass-through for many of the small businesses. So they would, in effect, be getting the federal pass-through. If we hadn't disconnected, they would have been getting that pass-through and then an additional pass-through because of the 2013 legislation. And that's not made very clear in a lot of the news proposals. So if people want to check on the Tax Foundation, it's a noted national think tank, not exactly a liberal think tank, but they called that out. The other thing is on student transportation. It's not as if there isn't money for student transportation in the Department of Education budgets. I've always thought that especially in smaller areas, there might be a way to have smaller buses that are activity buses part of the time, but could also be used to take seniors and people with disabilities to like appointments around places. And sometime in the future, maybe that's something that Representative McEwen might want to look at and be sort of creative about uses of buses so they're not just sitting in parking lots until 3 in the afternoon when they want to be used as an activity bus.
Well, I think you raised a really good question and a really good comment about the access to transit services for students in rural communities, and that is a different issue for larger cities. So I know Representative McEwen, whose district includes quite a bit of rural areas down on the south coast, Coos Bay, North Bend, those areas. I know this is a significant concern of hers. So.
Well, I understand, but I think that there may be some ways that things could be discussed that would allow some joint use of vehicles so that it isn't lots of entities for some of those other things. Keeping some of the funding coming from the Department of Education.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments or questions? Oh,
Okay. So, all right, Senate Bill 1536. So as everyone on the board knows, this was a bill that Senator Courtney brought to the board for discussion before the session several months before, and we had a robust conversation about that and the expectations around this issue, and the board took a decision to support Senate Bill 1536, which does a couple main things. Number one, of course, makes some substantial changes to the governance structure of Salem-Keizer Transit, and number two, provides Salem-Keizer Transit with similar taxing authority enjoyed by TriMet and Lane, and used in good manner for many years to help develop a robust transit system in those parts of the state. So since its inception, Salem-Keizer Transit, the governance model has been unique compared to other mass transit districts around the state. Like I said, this was championed by Senate President Peter Courtney as well as Senator Jackie Winters, and I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank them extensively, especially Senate President Peter Courtney, for his ongoing support of transit. He's often labeled the bus boy. That's many years ago during a campaign. He was one of the first members of the Chariots board. He was called the bus boy on the Salem City Council, and he wears that moniker with pride. And so he is a great advocate of ours, and we really appreciate all the work that he does. We also want to thank President Krebs for coming and testifying on this bill on multiple occasions, as well as participating in stakeholder meetings with President Courtney and others, and just having conversations in the community about this. So it's a lot of work to help arrive at a compromise bill. And it's a challenge, and so thank you very much for participating in that process, President. In an effort to stabilize transit operational funding, the Salem-Keizer Transit Board has long prioritized securing the approval of or authority to implement an employer payroll tax. So an option, like I mentioned, that both LTD and TriMet currently enjoy. While LTD and TriMet were granted the authority to implement this payroll tax at their creation, they also have governor-appointed boards, and as opposed to Salem-Keizer Transit's currently elected board. And that was the kind of inherent back and forth with Senate President Courtney and other stakeholders on this. So some of the issues that we have up here, the seats will be appointed by the governor and will remain geographically based. We're going to have an ongoing conversation with the governor's office about how those decisions are going to be made. The bill does require the governor to consult with at least one business or civic group in the community as part of the process, and we're expecting that to take place sometime later in the year. The bill does not go into effect until January 1 of 2019. In regards to the taxing authority, as we have up there, there is a negotiated part of a compromise 7-year moratorium on that. And that really, I think, provides the board the current ability to work with the allocated STIF dollars over the next few years before we have a conversation on this particular issue. So this is really all about long-term funding stability, and I think that was part of the compromise around the bill. So passed unanimously out of committee. It received unanimous support on the Senate and only a few no votes on the House. So widely supported in the building, and just here to answer any questions, concerns.
Any questions? Nope.
Okay, so Dale just walked you guys through a couple of the legislative victories from the past session, and I get the pleasure of briefing you guys on a couple of ongoing challenging issues in the building. So the first is the state employee bus pass program, which, as you know, was reinstated before, or as part of the 2016 legislative session. We received an allocation of funding to restart that after it was not renewed in 2010. We saw a great usage of the program throughout its funding life, and we worked through the interim to increase legislator awareness about the usage of the program and how it was helping to keep congestion out of the downtown Capitol area as folks parked at the park and rides and rode the bus into town. And it was unfortunately not part of the governor's recommended budget, which is the kind of the baseline starting point for budget negotiations, which was released in November of 2017, because of substantial cuts to most state agencies, including the Department of Administrative Services, where the program was housed. And as we went forward in session with the negotiations around House Bill 2017, sucking essentially the air out of any other potential transit discussions, it was difficult to get traction with legislators as we sold them on the idea of funding the state employee bus pass program. I think they were of the mindset that they dedicated enough funding to transit and transportation generally through their $5 billion transportation package, that there just wasn't the energy in the building to pursue this any further. So it's something that Dale and I and Alan and the board can pursue going forward into 2019. It's as they always are, an ongoing discussion, a budget discussion, and we will continue to raise the issue with legislators and push for it as we go forward. And similar issue here with the energy incentive tax credit is one that you've heard about before. I've briefed you on it last session at this meeting, and I don't have a different answer for you this time. It's something that is ongoing. Salem-Keizer Transit is one of the largest holders of these energy incentive tax credits in the state. Many of the other local government stakeholders that are involved in this and that hold these tax credits that they're unable to sell hold much smaller ones, and it seems as if there is less of a desire to move forward with a legislative fix as there has been in past sessions. Dale and I had conversations leading up to the 2018 session with legislators who in the past have been supportive of our cause. And just similar to the state employee bus pass program, it remains a dollars and cents question. I think there's little doubt that Salem-Keizer was left unjustly holding the bag, so to speak. It's just there's no easy legislative fix other than to spend state dollars that just aren't there right now. As I'm sure you've read in the news, there are ongoing news stories with the Oregon Department of Energy and its mishandling of tax credit issues, both large and small, and these stories seem to just leak out like a slow drip in the news that just keeps it in the news cycle, and it makes it challenging from a political standpoint to work with Odo to fix this issue. So. It's as Dale mentioned earlier, there was the grant awarded from the federal level to purchase some CNG vehicles. So there are avenues that could be pursued elsewhere that might be fill-ins for this money, but we will continue to bird dog it at the state level, but it's been a challenge. So. And then I guess we touched on some of this throughout the presentation, but as Dale mentioned, the implementation date of the House Bill 2017 money and the distribution of those funds has been moved up as a result of House Bill 4059. And we have been working closely with the Department of Revenue and the Department of Transportation to ensure that those funds are allocated on time and correctly. And we will continue to do that as they roll out in sometime next year is when we anticipate the first distribution of funds. We'll continue with our legislator outreach, educating them on how we're going to be spending these new dollars, what new services they'll see. We've been doing that, but we'll continue to keep them educated as these new services roll out and as things change. As Dale mentioned again, we will continue to work with the governor's office to manage the implementation of this new appointment process that was created in Senate Bill 1536. It's something that obviously Salem-Keizer Transit has never done before, but both TriMet and Lane Transit District have had this structure in place for many years now and have both reported being very happy with how the process has worked throughout the years. So it's something that we will be sure to work closely with the governor's office on to ensure that there's a smooth transition and that things go as planned. And then I think we will be making an attempt to re-engage various local government stakeholders on this energy incentive tax credit. I know the city of Portland has a rather large one. There's some rural school districts in the state that are stuck with some of these. So it's something that's dropped off the radar a little bit, but we will certainly be bringing it back going forward in the interim and into the 2019 session. And as these appointments are made and other changes to the Salem-Keizer Transit service levels change, we will need to be sure to include our community stakeholders and solicit their input and keep them apprised of how things are changing, what we're doing, how we're being responsible stewards of this new source of funding that we've received, and how we are improving our service to the residents of the community. And finally, as is the way of the world these days, TNC legislation has come to be a staple of the Oregon legislature, and how we regulate TNCs and other autonomous vehicles, and those sorts of issues are likely to come back in the 2019 session. There's efforts underway to regulate them at the state level. We just don't know.
We talked about this last time, and I got called out for not explaining what TNC is, Transportation Network Company, so Uber, Lyft, and those kind of companies.
Thank you.
So those conversations remain ongoing, and Dale and I both have engaged with the legislative folks at those companies and that are the legislators that are working on those issues, and we'll certainly keep you apprised of discussions that are happening at that level going forward.
All right, so any other questions before we go into political outlook for 2018-2019?
Yes,
Yeah.
Director Evans.
I just have one clarification.
Director Evans.
So when they do the transfer of board members, is that going to be phased in?
We don't know for certain, but I believe that part of the conversation is going to be how do we phase it in once January 1 of 2019 occurs.
Yeah.
The desire is to have an appropriate limited phase-in process so that there's not a institutional shock. There's a lot of really good knowledge of members on this board, and we want to make sure that I think the goal would be to space it out over several years in order to make sure that it's transitioned
Like when
properly.
their term ends, then they...
That would be the goal. That is the hope,
Good.
is to allow the terms to expire, and then at that point,
that would make sense,
new
hopefully.
entities. So all of this has to go through. The governor just has a new transportation advisor that we will need to work through, as well as their executive appointments people. We've already started having those conversations.
Good.
All right. So the 2018-2019 political season is upon us. So we have 2019 is our legislative session next year. It's a long session. Begins January 22nd, which is a week or so, a couple weeks earlier than we normally start session. The goal is to get done before the July 4th holiday. So it's a goal. It's there. We were there to support America, so that's why we want to get out of there before July 4th. So constitutionally limited to 160 days. Usually we have organizational days in the mid to late January where a lot of housekeeping gets done in the building, new legislators are trained, lobbyists are trained, all sorts of good things happen, and then we have like a week and a half to 2 weeks off before session starts. No longer. We're actually starting right after those organizational days end and then working through however long until we have sine die. The 2018 gubernatorial race. So first of all, the campaign season goes from, we have a May 15th primary, and then we have the November 6th general. The 2018 gubernatorial race right now is between, of course, Governor Kate Brown, and then there are several Republicans currently vying for the top seat to run against her. Probably Representative Newt Bueller from Bend is a front runner on that, although there are, we will know more after the May 15th primary when Republicans will choose their individual, and then it will be a very heavy race. I think there's going to be a lot of money spent over the next few months around this. So that's definitely going to be one to watch. In regards to the ballot measures, right now there are, I think the last time I checked, the Secretary of State's website, there are over 45 potential ballot measures. That'll, of course, be whittled down substantially. If you're looking for a ballot measure, you have to, if you're working towards getting one on the ballot, you have to get a certain number of signatures, whether it's 88,000 for just a regular initiative petition or 18,000 for a constitutional change. So we have some big ones that you've already started to see ads for. IP 37, the banning taxes on grocers, is going to be a heavily contested one. That's one where you see groups like Costco and Albertsons and Safeway contribute a lot of money on that. Bonding for affordable housing. This is House Joint Resolution 201 from last session. They're trying to make a constitutional change so that cities, when they bond for affordable housing, they don't need to spend it effectively on city-owned or municipal-owned properties. Privately owned properties can receive some of the funds as a way to increase the amount of affordable housing in the state. IP 31 and IP 22, both controversial issues. So there are quite a few ballot measures. There's quite a few more that I could spend time talking about that I can do offline with individuals. July 6th is when the signatures are due, so we'll know a few weeks after that what the actual ballot measure outlook for 2018 is going to be. The legislature, the big thing I'll say about this is that we are one seat away from what's called a supermajority in the House and the Senate. Currently there are 35 Democrats to 25 Republicans in the Senate. Once you gain a 36 to 24 supermajority, the ruling party is able to institute tax change laws or tax increases with their seats. So that's a huge number that we're going to be watching. There are several contested races throughout the state that could see that one seat shift, or could see more Republicans pick up seats. It's going to be like I said, heavily contested race, and the gubernatorial race will trickle down the ballot as well and have an impact. And again, in the Senate, one seat away from a supermajority there, and there are several seats around the state, including the seat formerly held by Senator Alan Bates down in Ashland, which is now held by Alan DeBoer, who is retiring. So that will be an open seat. So quite a bit going on from a political landscape, and I can answer any questions or chat more. I always like talking about this stuff, so if you want to get into a long conversation, we can probably take it outside, but here to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
Sorry,
Director Bush.
I just want to say thank you for all your hard work and for helping us when we went to Washington DC in March and Zeke was there. And
See, that's another one for Joel. He's watching, so there you go.
Oh,
Thanks,
We
Joel.
stuck out in the snow and we tramped through all the wet, and we success happened because we stuck to it.
Well, thank you for going out there. Thank you for advocating both here in Salem and in DC.
Well, thank you for all the work you do too, because we couldn't carry it all by ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to represent Salem Kaiser Transit in the building, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're now reached the period of public comment, and in public comment, each person is allowed 3 minutes, and we have 2 people signed up, and so the first person on the list is Ken Ritchie. And please use the mic.
Okay, thank you. I am Ken Richens. I am Executive Board Officer for Amalgamated Transit Union Local 757. And I am here this evening to thank the staff for their efforts during this most recent, most unusual contract negotiation session. I have to say it was one of the most professional contract negotiations I have been in my career as a union officer. And some of you may wonder, okay, well, what was the difference? You know, last time it took us 30 months to get, you know, from no to yes, and this time is just a few months work. And I just want to share a little bit of that with you. It makes all the difference in the world when 2 parties come to the table determined to negotiate in good faith. And one of the key elements of negotiating in good faith is putting your proposals on the table, have them say what they mean and mean what they say, and when you can say yes, you know, say yes and be done with it. But when the answer was no, I want to tell you that district did a very fine job of explaining why the answer was no without any fluff, and it made it a lot easier to come to acquiescence when you are negotiating in good faith. And so that was a huge element in this particular negotiation, and I want to give acknowledgement to that. That said, on behalf of the members of Local 757, we have already ratified this agreement, and with an overwhelming majority. And I'm here to urge each one of you tonight to acquiesce with the same. A yes vote from you would be very meaningful and will put us on a path to kind of hopefully a new era with Salem Transit and ATU. With my 45 seconds left, I will share one more little anecdote. We joined 757 in like 1994, and the ensuing contract negotiation, that 18 months was disastrous, was very expensive, and when it was all said and done, we got a contract anyway. Last time around, we visited with each other for 30 months, and it was all said and done, yeah, we got a contract anyway. We all both spent a lot of money, and unnecessarily probably, and we still got a contract. This time we avoided that and got together, and I hope it starts a new voice between ATU and Chariot. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, and we appreciate all the good work that the union employees do for this agency, because without them we wouldn't be the success that we are. So thank you.
Yeah, understood, and it's a pleasure to have served this district for, you know, over 43 years, but I wasn't going to say that again.
Thank you.
Okay, I mean you all no disrespect, but I need to get that.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Greg Hathaway?
President Krebs and members of the board, for the record, my name is Greg Hathaway. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Hathaway Larson. My address is 955 Northwest Lovejoy Street in Portland. I represent Walmart. In the state of Oregon, I've represented Walmart for about the last 15 or 16 years. And the reason I'm here tonight on behalf of Walmart is you have on your agenda, after the public comments session, a resolution to acquire a portion of Walmart's property in South Salem for the South Salem Transit Center. And so I wanted to address that issue in this public comment section because you will be considering taking a vote on that resolution in a few minutes. About 2 weeks ago, I sent a letter to the board indicating that Walmart was very concerned about the transit district acquiring a portion of Walmart's property. We expressed concern that acquiring the property would adversely affect Walmart, would adversely affect its customers. We have concerns that the way the project is designed would create problems with our truck delivery circulation, creating congestion. We think there are safety issues associated with building the project on the Walmart site. It's going to remove a significant portion of Walmart's parking spaces, which is a very large concern to Walmart because parking spaces are very significant in terms of the success of the business in any Walmart store and certainly in South Salem. Also, we express concern that it doesn't appear as though there's been any public process regarding selecting the Walmart site as the preferred site for the South Salem Transit Center. We've requested information in the letter, and I've been speaking with Mr. Featherston about trying to acquire information exactly about that public process, but to date we have not received any information that would describe for us exactly what the process was publicly in acquiring or wanting to acquire the Walmart site. And Walmart hasn't been involved with regards to that process. So in the letter that I sent you, we've asked for information related to the process. We've asked for information regarding exactly what the design of the project is going to be. And we're also asking for information related to any kind of a transportation assessment regarding the relationship between the project and the traffic that occurs in that surrounding area and the traffic that goes to Walmart. So what we're requesting, I spoke with Mr. Featherston earlier this afternoon, what we're requesting when this comes up before your board in a few minutes, Walmart is requesting that you continue the resolution consideration for 30 days. Hopefully that will allow us to get the information that we've requested from the agency and also give us an opportunity to visit the site. Mr. Featherston and I have discussed he and I going out to the site with our consultants, with our staff at the store to show the transit district exactly the concerns that we have on site with regards to the loss of parking spaces and truck circulation, and just how customers get in and out of the store and the site, and whether or not there's going to be safety conflicts between our customers and the use of the transit center. So we're requesting that you continue this for 30 days to give us opportunity to get some more information and to also go visit the site so that we can continue the conversation that Mr. Featherston and I have been having for about the last 4 or 5 weeks. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Director Kelly?
Well, I'm not sure it's a question. Currently, we have a bus stop at the Walmart site in South Salem. And is it any less of a problem for people to walk to a transit site that was facilitated on the site there than it would be to walk across the parking lot to take the bus?
I'm not sure if I'm the person to answer that question for sure, but I believe, based on the design that I've seen, is that the design is going to be very significant in terms of the amount of property that the district needs to accommodate the transit center. So there's just a larger impact in terms of how it affects the functioning of the Walmart store.
But if in fact the parking, the bus is accessed in an area of the parking lot versus walking across the entire parking lot and intermingling with cars, would not that be safer for the transit passengers?
Well, I'm not sure if the Walmart customer is actually using transit for purposes of getting to and from the store. It's mostly auto-driven. But again, I'm probably not the right person to answer that question. And I haven't even visited the site for a long time since I was involved with that store originally. But those are questions that we can talk about at the site so that we can try to respond to that question.
And the other thing you could do is you could do a passenger count of the number of people who access and leave their Walmart carts near the bus. Because there are people who take the bus who are Walmart customers right there, and they leave their carts down at the bus.
Do you guys have a number with regards to that information in terms of how many transit riders are actually using the bus stop and shopping at Walmart? Is that something that you guys can get for us?
We could probably tell you how many people are accessing at that bus stop.
Mm-hmm.
But as I drive by there on a frequent basis, there are Walmart customers who use the bus, who leave their the Walmart shopping cart right down there at the bus. So obviously there are people who are using the bus who are shopping at Walmart. I was on the board when you originally acquired that site, and there was the contention that Walmart customers were not going to be using the bus, and that has actually not been proven, I don't believe.
Well, let's get that information, because I think that's a really good question, because the whole idea behind Walmart is trying to serve its customers. And right now, based on the information that we have, Walmart is concerned that based on the proposed design, it's actually going to adversely affect the customers that shop at Walmart. So I think we need to find out more information with regards to your question.
Okay. Well, we thank you, and this is a consideration, so thank you for coming.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I think our general manager would like to make...
So if I could, I would just like to make a comment. And so we know Mr. Hathaway, you all received that email with the letter. And so for those of you that were on the board back then may remember, for the site selection process, we went through a pretty extensive process to include discussions with representatives of each of the proposed sites on all corners, including the Walmart store managers. So staff is working with our legal counsel to provide responses to the questions asked. Really, at this point, there's no action by the board needed in response to the letter, because really all the correspondence with Walmart needs to go through our legal counsel, because this is now that process. It's my recommendation that the board proceed with the property designated action and adopt the resolution. But by doing so, there's still a lengthy process to go through. There's another appraisal and a 40-day waiting period for that process, which can happen concurrently with what I think Mr. Hathaway is asking, is the ability to continue working with legal counsel and staff. So that would be my recommendation.
And I do remember lengthy times. I remember meetings at Salem Heights Hall, I believe, and some other places with consultants and lots of public outreach for locations of sites for the South Salem Transit Center. How long have we had potential funding for it?
Well, I think the initial site selection funding was even before I got here.
Because we transferred some of the initial site selection to the Kaiser Transit Center, which is celebrating its 5th anniversary.
Director Rogers?
I don't know if I heard wrong earlier, but I thought you said action item H2 would be deferred.
H3.
Oh, H3, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I wrote that down wrong.
Okay. Well, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to comment at this time that hasn't signed up? If not, we will move on to our consent calendar. And do we have a motion to...
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. All those, I should say, those opposed, same sign. Then we'll move on to our first action item, which is the action pending to dependent on the outcome of the executive session discussion regarding the approval of the ATU labor contract.
Thanks. And I'd ask Paula Dixon, Director of Administration, to present the staff report.
Good evening, President Krebs and members of the board. I'm very pleased tonight to present to you for your consideration the 2018-2021 labor agreement with ATU 757. This tentative agreement represents 6 months of cooperative discussion and negotiation between the district and the ATU. It includes economic and work rule agreements, with some of the highlights being a 3% wage adjustment effective July 1st each year of 2018, 2019, and 2020. The addition of a Martin Luther King Jr. holiday in 2020, continuation of the existing health benefit package, additional longevity pay for employees with 25 and 30 years of service, an increase in shift differential pay for swing shift or graveyard employees, a one-time $300 signing bonus in July 2018, and adding vacation, life insurance, and retirement benefits for part-time employees. It also included some key work rule changes, a pilot program to evaluate the benefit of alternative work schedules for part-time transit operators, streamlining our extra board rules to simplify administration, new language to define occasions when a physician's verification of inability to work is required, and transit operators and maintenance employees will now participate in uniform selection. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Oh, Marcia?
No, I didn't have a
Okay.
question. I was
Okay.
just-
Do we have a motion?
I'll do it.
I'm-
Did you want to?
Okay.
Okay.
I move the board approve a 3-year labor agreement with ATU 757 for the period July 2018 through June 2021.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And thank you very much. Oh, yes.
So now that it's been approved, thank you very much, Board. I'd like to publicly make and acknowledge both negotiating teams, Paula and David on management side, and Ken and his group for having a great process. You heard Ken talk about it, Paula talk about it. And what we didn't talk here, but we have talked before, is this, I don't know when the last time, if we ever have, had a contract ratified and approved prior to the expiration of the existing contract,
We have.
which is pretty significant. And we have.
We have, yes, we have. The 1994 was a very rough time frame. The general manager left the next year. A rough time, and the general manager left the next year. And then I think that we had some fairly good rapport, and then when we were having funding crises, I think the last one was probably the most lengthy and the most difficult.
Okay, well, great. I would say, I just want to publicly say thank you to our team, thank you to Ken's team, and this is really great, you know, as we are moving into service expansion with the new revenue, having this put to the side and having the full Chariots team moving forward as we build that new service is important, and very pleased that you approved it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to action item 2, which is resolution 2018-02, property designation for South Salem Transit Center project.
And I'd ask Chris French to come up and make some make the opening staff reports.
Good evening, President Krebs and members of the board. I'm here this evening to present on the property designation for the South Salem Transit Center. The issue is, shall the board adopt resolution number 2018-2 authorizing Salem Area Mass Transit District to acquire by purchase or by exercising the power of eminent domain certain real property necessary for the construction of the South Salem Transit Center. The South Salem Transit Center development plan has been in the process for a while, and in order to move forward with that plan for the transit center, there is a need to acquire property from the current owner. That process can take place in two ways: cooperative negotiation between the district and the property owner, or in the case of it not being a cooperative agreement, the district using eminent domain as necessary to purchase the property. In both cases, the district must declare by resolution that the parcel is critical to the success of the project. Resolution number 2018-02 provides the basis for making this declaration. Ben Featherston, our legal counsel for the district, will guide the district in acquiring the property and identifying in the identified resolution. The financial impact for this negotiation will be, or for this project, sorry about this, the financial fiscal impact of this project will be the final negotiated price. An appraisal valuation done in April of 2017 was valuated for the property of $787,000. Funding the financial impact of this project will be the final negotiated price of the property, and the funds for this property are from grants for the Connect Oregon, as part of the Connect Oregon program, and also 5307 federal funds. Staff recommends that the board adopt resolution number 2018-02 authorizing Salem Area Mass Transit District to acquire by purchase or by exercising the power of eminent domain certain real property necessary to construct of the South Salem Transit Center project.
Are there any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
Okay.
No, I don't want that one.
Okay, well, since I'm the elder statesman on the board, I move that the board adopt Resolution 2018-2 authorizing the Salem Area Mass Transit District to acquire by purchase or by the exercise of the power of eminent domain certain real property necessary for construction of the South Salem Transit Center project.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Now we can discuss and ask Mr. French any questions if you have.
I have
Yes.
a concern. I deal in West Salem with traffic flow where they want to build a new bridge, but really it's the choke points that are on both sides of the bridge that create the problem. I would want us to develop this one way or another in the least restrictive way for the traffic flow of that area. And I would hope that that would be built in, baked in to the design. And that's my only concern about moving forward, is that I wouldn't want to create a choke point for anyone in that area.
I would actually think that having the buses off Commercial and making those connections would probably of a choke point right there. I don't think there's a tremendous choke point at that area of the district. Bob and I sort of share. He's got one side pretty much, and I've got the other side. So whereas the location of the transit, proposed transit transfer point would be in his current district, a lot of the people who would be utilizing that also live in my district on the other side. You know, you go out there, and as you get further away from town, the traffic in South Salem decreases greatly. So I just don't see, I understand, I think that's part of what we would have to do for the city for any proposed approval anyway, would be a traffic analysis. But I believe that some of that has been looked at. I can't remember, because I don't have it committed in my brain, how long ago we started this process and started looking at sites. I do remember that it was at least 3 or 4 years ago that we had some selected alternatives, but we had, and the staff is going to get it all together with every single date that we did, but, you know, it's so long ago that you don't find it.
Yeah. I was involved with a couple subdivisions that were really close to that area, and under construction it was fine, but after that subdivision filled out off of Boone, you could almost never get out during traffic flow turning across. You would have to go through parking lots before you got to Kubler. Once you hit Kubler, and where this is located, I believe that the flow is better there, but it's that Kubler, that is a choke point right there.
Isn't this located at Baxter in Commercial?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, and I believe that it is better down there as far as traffic flow. But you move north of Kubler and you get,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah, Boone Road comes in, you cannot.
Have you
turn
been
left.
out there since they did all of the remodels
Yeah.
last year? Because, you know, I drive out there, I take the cats out to places, you know, and for my other activities, I go to cash and carry quite frequently lately. And, you know, the traffic, Salem does not have a real traffic problem. 8% of the people say that there's a traffic problem.
Compared to the metro area.
Yes, more like a rush minute rather than a rush hour.
Yeah, rush 9 minutes in West Salem.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
But I think that the city will require some things for approval, but I just can't see that however many buses an hour are going to really impact the traffic.
That's true.
And just think of all those passengers they could take off the road, which might actually improve the traffic.
Well, I'm
And
hoping
actually, right now, you only have 3 bus lines. Be 3 buses
Yeah, I'm
coming in
hoping
there.
that it actually improves the, it would make sense that more shoppers would stop there, personally. That, since they can get off the bus right there, and they can catch a bus anywhere from there.
Well, and that is one of the things that happens where you have a transfer point with a lot of
You
traffic.
create
is-
energy
Yeah.
in that area.
I mean,
yeah.
in fact, you go into some cities and they actually develop retail entities around
That's what
transfer points.
Portland's done with
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
Max.
Yes, Director
So
Bush?
right now, when people get off the bus to get to the store, do they have to climb stairs?
They have to cross
There's a
Commercial.
ramp there too. No, well,
No.
not if they're.
It's
going
either
south.
stairs or there's a ramp. There's
Yes,
also a
but they have to also cross Commercial if they're going south, if they're coming in
Yeah.
from the
Coming
north.
from, okay, so they cross like at Baxter.
Yeah, there's a protected light there.
Okay, and another comment I just want to make, I've been in several public meetings recently and been hotly commented about transit buses. When they stop, the whole traffic stops. So getting the buses off the street, pullouts, or a transit center, or, you know, transfer center is much better for our whole
You're
traffic
talking
system.
River Road, aren't you?
Yes. I represent Kaiser, and so, yes.
That was my experience today.
It's,
And River Road is very narrow. There's no room on the
Yeah,
side.
that's
You
right.
can- We don't even have bicycle lanes. So,
it's frequently the concern, and one of the concerns of people who want to go faster, who pass me by on the left-hand side because I'm going the speed limit of 30. It's, it's partially we want to be there now, and we are the most important person. The buses do not delay all that long, and if you, if everybody who was on the bus was in the car, they would have just as much, if not more, congestion, so.
Yes, just,
Well, I do better when I see a picture of something. Is there some kind of conceptual drawing of what this is going to look like? Because I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, so I've written myself a note. I think we need to refresh the board on the whole project. Because it hasn't been a while.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear it the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah,
When I
so
first got on the
we'll
board,
schedule
I didn't.
that at an upcoming work session.
So just a question, because we have a Connect Oregon grant, when did we get that Connect Oregon grant?
Oh, it's been a while, and that's one of the issues is it's
Does
coming
it
to
expire?
Well, we are working with ODOT so that we are able to maintain that grant, and can't keep it forever.
So it's, yeah, because.
It's been several years.
Yeah, yeah.
So one other question for clarification. If this passes, we can still do all this work, or is delaying it going to help? I mean, what's going to happen either way?
Well, I think either way you go, we're still working with Mr. Hathaway and answering the questions. If you choose not to approve the action or adopt the resolution, then it delays the process even further because, please correct me if I'm wrong, so if this action's taken, we do need to submit a revised appraisal. Part of that process gives Walmart a 40-day period to evaluate that. So there's
Still steps to go.
stuff to go. But if you take the action, we can work through this, I believe, concurrently. And if we work out an agreement, then we just kind of are good. And if we are not able to, then we've been going through that process all along.
Okay. I'm good.
okay. Are we ready for this? Sure. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
We have one abstain, or one no?
I'm voting against.
Oh, you voted yes, okay. Okay, motion passes, and we'll move on to item 4, which is appointment of the board subcommittee for Highway 99. Oh, thank you, Mr. French.
He's going to stay here.
Oh, he's going to stay here, okay.
Report
Can I
also.
make a quick comment?
Pardon?
Can I make a quick comment?
Oh, yes, Director Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway, for coming and expressing Walmart's concerns. We really appreciate the conversation to have with our community partners, and I know that we're all trying to achieve the same goal, serving our customers. So thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to the conversation. I'll be in contact with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drive carefully.
Okay, we're.
So Chris French will present this report also.
And once again, I'm here this evening to present on the formation of a subcommittee for the 99E corridor project. The issue is shall the president of the shall the president appoint board members to a subcommittee to work on the city of Canby. Sorry, wow. Shall the sorry, wow, I'm tongue-tied tonight. Shall the president appoint board members to a subcommittee to work with the City of Canby City Council and its Transit Advisory Committee on issues pertaining to the 99E corridor project.
The purpose of this committee of the 99E corridor project is to explore service options that could increase opportunities for travel along the 99E corridor between Canby and the city of Salem and Oregon City. Transit service along this corridor exists now, currently provided by both the city of Canby and Salem Area Mass Transit. And both lines currently meet at Woodburn. The 99E corridor project is funded primarily by a network grant from the Oregon Department of Transportation and Chariots in the city of Canby. The purpose of the subcommittee for the 99E corridor planning project is to receive a presentation from the consultant that has been working on this plan, Jarrett Walker and Associates. They will present alternatives that they've been exploring and we've been working on with them, and that will help the conversation between the City of Canby's board and Chariots board and their transit committee will help, and it will be instrumental in the recommendation prepared, the final recommendation prepared by JWA. Staff proposes that the board president appoint members of the board to establish a subcommittee for the 99E corridor project as described above.
Okay, and thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. French? Well, I personally think it's a good idea because it'll serve everybody in that corridor better if we have buses service that goes all the way through. And with that in mind, I appoint the following board members to the 99E corridor planning project subcommittee, and those are Director Evans with alternate Director Thompson serving as his alternate, Director Bush with Director Kelly serving as her alternate, and I will serve myself with Director Lincoln serving as my alternate. And I know all of you are interested in this project, and I think it will be a real asset, and it will be similar to our 1X Wilsonville service that presently operates in cooperation with the Smart Transportation System up in Wilsonville. So thank you very much, Mr. French. And we'll move on to our information items, which the first item is the summary of the 2018 Public Engagement Report for A Better Chariots.
So I'll ask Matt Berggren to please make the staff report.
Hello, President Krebs, members of the board. I'm here today to present the summary of the 2018 Public Engagement Report for A Better Chariots. So some quick background. In September 2017, staff presented the fiscal year 17 annual performance report. Then in November 2017, we conducted an extensive needs assessment process. Out of that needs assessment, we developed a list of needs in the community, and in February of 2018, we developed a service proposal to try to meet those needs, given our current funding and then our expected funding from House Bill 2017, which we'll get in 2019. We took that service proposal out to the public in February and March of 2018, and this summary is a summary of the reports that presents the information we learned from the riders and the greater community during that public outreach process. As a quick reminder, during the process, we promoted the proposal online, over the phone, on buses, at transit centers, and we had a number of in-person outreach events, including open houses, tabling events, presentations, and in-person announcements. So who we heard from, we had 656 riders and community members fill out a feedback form. Of those who filled out a form, 19% were collected in person, 81% collected online. Of those who filled out the form, 91% ride Chariots, and 54% of them ride 4 or more times per week. So a lot of current riders, but also 9% are non-riders. And 88% of those people live in the Salem-Keizer area. The remaining 12% live outside Salem-Keizer, either in Marion and Polk counties or neighboring counties. So what we heard overall, there's generally a positive attitude about the proposed changes. As a reminder, we had 2 phases. Phase 1 is September 2018, and then Phase 2, September 2019. So overall, a lot of positive attitudes about the proposed changes. However, 21% of people specifically asked for Phase 2, the weekend service, to start September 2018, to flip them. That's not possible because of when the funding will come in, but there's definitely a lot of desire for weekend service, as we
I've
all
had a
know.
lot of questions from constituents. When?
Right, exactly.
Why
So
not?
we tried to be pretty clear. We had Phase 1, September 2018, Phase 2, September 2019, and had different sections and different maps to make it clear they're 2 different stages. Overall for Phase 1, though, September of 2018, this year, only 5% of respondents did not like the proposed changes for Phase 1. About 29% were neutral or unsure, and 65% said they liked the proposal. A lot of the people who said they were unsure or neutral just said that this won't affect me at all. This doesn't affect any routes I ride, so they said neutral. There were 3 points that kind of stood out in that were brought up multiple times in the outreach. One is that although we're trying to move a lot of the buses back closer together around Chemeketa Community College, a lot of people feel like we're not going far enough. So there's a desire to have a more comprehensive Chemeketa Transit Center or some way to get the buses closer together to allow for transfers more easily. The second point that came up quite a bit was the planned proposed removal of service around Walmart on Turner, Costco, and Ryan Drive, the medical facilities there. A number of people expressed the need to maintain bus service in those areas. And related to that is we were proposing adding 30-minute service outbound onto Fairview Industrial Drive and 25th, but not resolving the issue of having 30-minute service inbound in those areas and on Mission. So that was brought up. And finally, a number of people were concerned about Route 11 not operating as close to Howell Middle School, Winco, and Shopco. So those are the 3 big topics that came up in the open-ended questions for Phase 1. Phase 2, September 2019, this was the expanded service into Saturdays and Sundays, later evenings on weekdays, some more round trips for our regional service, and some holidays expansion. Similar to Phase 1, only 4% of respondents did not like the proposed changes. However, for Phase 2, only 4% were neutral or unsure. 92% had a positive feeling about the Phase 2 proposal. Even so, there was still a number of, we outlawed for open-ended comments to try to get feedback on how riders or community members would improve the proposal even more. So there was a few topics that came up. Saturday service, some riders, we weren't proposing having every route run on Saturday, and some riders want more routes to run on Saturday, so ones that were mentioned at least once, routes 6, 22, 23, and 27. Similar story with Sunday. There's about half of the routes planned to run on Sunday, and the rest would not run in our current proposal. And there were a number of routes, 6, 9, 14, 22, 23, and 27, that were mentioned at least once as routes that people wanted to see active. Additionally, some of the service on Saturday will run every 30 minutes for most of the day, and some every 60 minutes. On Sunday, all the routes running except for Route 11 would run every 60 minutes. So there was a number of people who asked for 30-minute service on some of their routes, including 2, 8, 19, and 21. For later evenings, there were, in our current proposal, some routes would continue to run till about 9, some routes would be extended till about 10 p.m., and some routes would be extended till about 11 p.m. There were a few riders that asked for routes 9 and 10X to run a little bit later than we proposed. Additionally, there were a number of people who suggested that 11 p.m. shouldn't be the latest we run for some of our routes, that should actually be midnight. And finally, there was a few concerns about the idea of staggering the end times. So today we end all of our service around 9 p.m. That's the last pull out, so really between 9:15, 9:45, all the buses are heading back to the Del Webb Operations Center. So there were a few people that were concerned that it would be confusing trying to figure out when does my route actually stop running. And just so everyone understands, the reason we are planning to stagger the end times is because there are some routes that we believe will have higher ridership later into the evening and some routes that won't see as much. So we're trying to best distribute our resources. And the fourth topic that came up was Route 1X. We're proposing, was it 1 or 2 round trips midday? Yeah, so we're proposing 2 midday round trips on Route 1X. Currently, we just have the AM peak and the PM peak, and some riders want actually the AM and PM peak to be expanded a little bit, and other riders actually just want more robust midday service. In our proposal, we said we're planning on doing a couple round trips, but we also plan to work with SMART to try to see if they'll also do some round trips. So there's an opportunity there to get more expanded midday service by working with our partner, SMART, who runs a little over half of the current 1X trips. And finally, holiday service. The way we proposed, we've talked to the board more recently than this engagement about which days we would consider running on holidays, but during this engagement, all we said is we're going to run on most of the holidays at some level of service. We didn't really give many details. And surprisingly to me, there weren't many people actually saying, please definitely run on holidays, or please make sure you run on these certain holidays. We actually got a lot of people saying, do not run on Thanksgiving and Christmas. We have nine people said this. I think it was a mixture of them saying, I wouldn't ride on these days anyway, don't waste your resources here, spend them elsewhere, and a lot of people expressed concern for the operators and other staff spending time with their families, et cetera. So anyways, it was something that I didn't expect to come out of the outreach. People actually asking us not to run on these 2 days specifically. New Year's Day was brought up once, but Thanksgiving and Christmas were the days brought up 9 times. So that was the main results of the engagement period. So our next steps are kind of split into 2. We're first taking, this was the plan for this September and then next September. So for this September, we're now working through the process of finalizing our full proposal based on this input, modifying our proposal, coming up with the final plan, and that will go to the board for the May board meeting. And that would be implemented September 4th, 2018 would be the first day of service for that service change, if approved by the board. And then when it comes to the plan for September 2018, we have this service proposal we brought out to the public. We'll be working on fare proposals going to the public as well, and then they'll be getting more information on exactly how much funding we have, et cetera, what all the rules are. So going into the summer, into the fall, there'll be more work done to come up with a more robust proposal, and that goes to what will be the newly formed Chariots State Transportation Improvement Fund Advisory Committee. So right now we're really kind of focused in on the plan for this September because that's upcoming, and then the attention will turn back to next September. Are there any questions?
Questions? I think it's an exciting time for us. Oh.
No, I didn't have a question. I have a comment.
Well, thank you very much.
Then I do have a comment. So,
comment? Okay.
So we have news, or Matt has news, and I think all the board should know this news.
So I've accepted a job at TransLink up in Vancouver, British Columbia. So starting at the end of May, I'll be one of the senior planners in the Transit Network Management Group.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Which city? Which city?
Vancouver, British Columbia,
Vancouver.
up in Canada.
You know how to say A after?
I'm going to learn.
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations.
I just wanted to thank everyone on the board for the opportunity to work here over the last 3+ years. I've learned a lot working here, and it's been great working with all the rest of the staff, and I felt very supported, and I've been able to, pursue my career here, and I'm really excited about going up to TransLink and, starting the next chapter of my life, but I'm going to miss this place a lot. So.
That's a great transit system. I mean, it's one of the
Yeah.
best ones on the West Coast. So.
And they have a $10 billion 10-year plan funded, so
yes,
it's going to be a lot of fun. $10 billion over 10 years.
So are you still riding your bike to the point, from the point down?
I've been taking the Route 15 now. Now that it's back on the Morrison Bridge, I can take the 15 to the point to get down here. But today I drove because the point doesn't run this late.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And our general manager has a comment.
Just make a comment. So if you recall, for someone you that have been on the board a while, the first time we saw Matt present to this group was as a PSU student who we brought in a graduate student program to do the connector, or to do an assessment, which resulted in the connector pilot. And we brought him on board. He's done a great job for us, and it's time for him to move on to a bigger and better opportunity. We wish him well. We thank him for his service. We had a little celebration today. But it's very gratifying to see someone progress and move on. And much as we hate to see him leave, I'm very proud to see him move on to do bigger and better things. So good luck.
And we will miss you.
Yes, we
You all
will.
too.
So,
Any other questions before I go? It's your last chance.
I have one.
Yeah.
Did you save money for housing when you go up there?
Did I save money for housing? No. Will I be able to afford it? Maybe. I won't be able to buy a house, that's for sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll see you in, I'll wave at you in July when I go up for my mission trip.
Yeah.
Fly out of there.
It
Yeah,
just means
that
that
sounds
Whistler is closer.
yes.
Cool. All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
everyone.
much.
We'll move on to board reports. So the first one is the Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee. Director Thompson.
Yeah, we had two meetings, actually. The first one was a Technical Advisory Committee meeting where we discussed some 5310, which is federal funds, how we would distribute that money to chariots and other organizations that are qualified. And then the second meeting was the one where we decided, or approved, basically, that distribution, and apparently that distribution isn't working this time, so we'll probably bring it to the next board meeting. And our next STF, next meeting will discuss the adjustments. Apparently there are some changes to the amount of funds that were available. So you'll see that next board meeting. You'll see the end of the request.
Thank you. And the next one is the Mid-Willamette Area Commission on Transportation, Director Kelly.
We did meet this month, and we will not meet in May. So one of the outcomes of House Bill 2017 is a directive to the Oregon Department of Transportation, or the Transportation Commission, to work with the metro area of Portland on looking at where there may be potentials for what's called value pricing, or some people call it congestion pricing. And in other words, they're talking about tolls and portions based on the time of day that people travel. So we had a presentation from the project manager on that, and we'll probably have some more as they go along, but it was a really interesting presentation. Then there's a thing called Fix-It projects, and so we had a presentation on what qualifies for Fix-It projects and how they choose them. Ken Woods then reported on the meeting with the Oregon Transportation Commission that happened in March, and I already reported on that at the last meeting because I was there and reminded them that everything, they need to watch how the federal people are going to do with vehicles and capital purchases to make sure that we stay whole, even with the new funding for hopefully mainly operations. We had a discussion on a project in the area regarding the Aurora Donald interchange and some work that's being done to do some plans for that area to make it less of a hazard for everyone concerned. And then we had a presentation, much like tonight, on the summary of what happened at the legislative. There was not much to do with transit at this meeting, but hopefully when we have final agenda things for the STIF Act, or whatever it's, the State Transportation Improvement Fund Advisory Council, we might try to get onto the agenda to talk about what the process is going to be so that the people in the area know, because we do include Marion and Polk counties in the connections, and I think that might be good to ask Mike Jaffe and Dan Fricke to put us on the agenda when staff can come and present a little bit so that they remember that transit is a part of the whole. Right now we've been working a lot on roads.
Thank you.
And if we have a steering committee, I'll suggest that myself. So.
Uh, I don't believe we had a Mid-Willamette Valley Council. You attended the last meeting, which was last week.
I reported on it
Yes.
last time.
SCATS, there's a report in your materials from Director Lincoln on the SCATS meeting, and I understand there's one issue that we probably will be working on at the work session, which deals with the greenhouse gas policy. And I guess each of the members of SCATS have been asked to go back to their boards for to get direction for that policy. And Director Lincoln is out of town, not at the meeting today, because she's going to attend the OMPOC meeting tomorrow in Grants Pass. So she's down in that area tonight, and makes it a little difficult to get out of a meeting at 9 o'clock and
Drive 4 hours.
Drive 3.5 hours down there, yes. And Director Evans, you're chair of the new Citizens Advisory Committee, and you also stood in for me on Tuesday at the inaugural meeting of that group.
Right. I'm actually the liaison between the board, and John Hamill is the chair of the committee, and then they elected Rick Hartwig as the vice chair. I must say I'm excited about the members that we've selected for that committee. It's a very strong support of the community with the varied groups that they represent. We plan to bring a progress report to the May meeting, so I won't say much tonight, but our next scheduled meeting is June 19th at 5:30 in this venue.
Okay. And now it's time for our general manager's report.
Just a few items to report. So this has been a celebration week. So yesterday we celebrated Admin Professionals Day. So we took the time to stop and recognize that group and had a nice little lunch and celebration for them. And today was Take Your Sons and Daughters to Work Day. And we had about 20 kids take a tour of the facilities and spend the day with their parents or grandparents to learn about transit and find the next Chariot employee group in a couple years. So yesterday, the governor issued a press release announcing her appointment of her new transportation policy advisor. You recall Carmen Four has been the transportation policy advisor for several years. She resigned after she accepted a new job. And so the new transportation policy advisor is Brendan Finn. And he comes to the state after spending the last 19 years as an aide to Portland City Commissioner Dan Salzman. And he had a variety of roles there, but he will come on board. And his main job there really is to shepherd the implementation of the new transportation package and to address any transportation matters on behalf of the governor. So once we've heard that this person, that he's on board, we will try to set up some time to meet with him. And then just a reminder, in a couple of days is May, and that begins budget season, and so be prepared for those meetings in the coming weeks. That concludes my reports.
Oh, right. Well, my report's kind of interesting because last month, Director Bush and our general manager were attending a conference in Washington, D.C., and we had a slight weather delay, so I attended last month's meeting by telephone. And
Good thing you did.
Yeah,
yes. Well, and I thank Vice Chair Director Evans for running the meeting that evening. We had a good meeting in Washington, D.C., and we met with the Federal Transit Administration, the Bus Coalition, the Transportation Committee, House Transportation Committee, and staff, and had a very nice meeting with Senator Merkley, and I think there are some real opportunities there for us in the future, especially once we start having 7-day-a-week service. And Senator Merkley is especially interested in electric buses, and I think there might be an opportunity there for us to develop some relationship with him on this project, on some sort of pilot project. But it was a very interesting meeting, very interesting weather too, because my flight was delayed going. I had to go a day later because of weather. And then the weather was fairly nice while we were there. It was cold. I mean, it was in the just above freezing most of the time we were there, but it was not, you know, if you put on enough clothes when you went outside, you were fine. And then the day we were supposed to come home, they canceled all the flights, so we ended up staying over, and Director Bush and our general manager, Mr. Pollock, got out a little faster than I did, but we all made it home safely, and so we're thankful for that, and it was generally a good experience. This month, I did a lot of, I'm not going to talk about all the meetings I attended. I did go to the mayor's State of the City address, and a couple neighborhood associations, and a city club luncheon, and I did go to the Transit Advocates meeting in Portland, which was interesting, and they're working on some initiatives for Oregon, and that was about it. I had about almost 23 hours of service, not counting the trip to Washington this month, but don't have any major things to report at this time. I did send a couple things to staff to deal with that they're looking at that were given to me at neighborhood meetings, but other than that, we're in pretty good shape. So, Director Rogers, we call on you for your report.
Okay, well, I didn't know if you have a short meeting in March and make up for it in April, but I'll try to talk fast, okay? We had the work session. Now, I invited, as vice chair of my neighborhood association, I invited Family Building Blocks to come and talk about how they help keep families together. I hope all of you know something about them. And then when I went to the Gubser Association, there they were again, so someone else had the same idea I had. They're a really exciting organization. And with all the good weather, I walked the neighborhoods a little bit. I'm going to need more business cards. Talk up transit, people mowing their lawns. I think some of the people enjoyed having a small break in the hot weather, pushing a mower, and just chat a little bit. And one of my favorite things was spending a day at the Del Webb facility. I spent some time in the call center and the dispatch, toured our very clean shop, and I've got to give kudos to that. Clean shop shows you really care about what you're doing, and I appreciate it. You know, I should have done it long ago, and if you haven't done it yet, you ought to. You know, it's really exciting to see how things work, and helps give me a better picture of how everything fits together like a puzzle. And while I was there, there was a battery-powered bus. Somebody was showing it off, you know, trying to get us interested. So I got a ride in that. It was very quiet. It was fast, but the cushions left a lot to be desired. You know, maybe we could, you know, put a little funding in for the seat cushions. And I think that's about it. It's hard to read my chicken scratching, but I think I got it all in.
Okay, thank you. Director Kelly?
I attended the work session of Carnegie Area Commission on Transportation. I made it to a couple of the city club meetings, the last one being Friday, where there was a panel on the new recycling rules. So those of you in the audience and those out in TV land, there have been major changes on what we can put in our blue cards for recycling. So go to Marion County Recycles, Marion County, Oregon Recycling, and you can get all of the information there. And I think that there's been a mailing that's gone out, but hopefully people haven't thrown it away, because it's really important. We need to figure out ways to do things the right way so that we don't have things intermingled in our recycling. Besides that, I haven't been doing too terribly much because I've been attending physical therapy quite a bit so that I'm not hobbling around.
I hope you get better quickly.
Well, we hope that's successful for you.
So far, it has been. I'm released. for a year to see my
Well, that's
surgeon,
good.
so I'm pleased.
Director Bush?
Well, I didn't attend the last board meeting because I was flying home from Washington DC. It was a great trip. I've never been there. It was the beginning of all of the spring breaks, so the city was had inundated with high school trips, middle school trips, and we got to the Capitol one night, no, the White House. We walked down there and we saw middle schoolers taking pictures. They were even doing their jumping pictures, so they were enjoying themselves. We enjoyed ourselves and did some touristy things, but it was very exciting to tour the Capitol itself, learn the history, and participate in this process of communication between local and federal and seeing results in our bus grant that we received. That was great. I wanted to say that I made it to the Transit Operator Maintenance Appreciation Day in March at ODARC 30, when all of our bus drivers get up and our maintenance people get up and get going and get the city moving. So I agree with Director Rogers that the facility is excellent. I get lots of compliments about our drivers when I'm out in the community, and so we want to serve each other well. So I've attended neighborhood association meetings and Kaiser City Council, and I've been kind of sitting in on the Salem Public Transit meeting, listening to how, again, working with each other, a partnership. We're not one against the other. We're trying to work with each other and serve our community and make our community a better place to live. So it's been exciting to watch those conversations develop. So this last month, a couple things I want to mention. I attended the Veterans Resource Center open house at Chemeketa Community College. Now, if you're a veteran and you're attending at Chemeketa, you have a place to go to help connect with services and help you in your education process. I went to a couple of town halls. Representative Post and Senator Kim Thatcher held one at Kaiser Fire District in April. And Senator Wyden, right? He held one as well, and he's going to hold another one this Sunday in the Kaiser area, so I can't remember where.
Center 50 Plus.
At Center 50 Plus, so that's not Kaiser, that's Salem. Thank you very much. And that's Sunday, I think, at like 1 or 2 o'clock.
I think it's 1.
1 o'clock? Okay.
1 o'clock.
So now we have the details right. I did go to the celebration of life for former COG director Jenny Messmer. It was well attended. Family really appreciated all that she did for the state of Oregon. In fact, she's in the middle of everything, and there were several public officials there, especially the city managers, that came to honor her. I've been watching, again, the STIF meetings along with Alan's actual attendance and participation. There's a lot of details and a lot of wheels that turn in the government, and I appreciate our visitors tonight hanging out till the end. You guys are doing great. Thanks for coming tonight.
So is this part of your government badge or something like that?
Which ones are we working on? Citizenship of the community and communications.
I see several troops have attended like city council meetings, Kaiser City Council, and they'll get to do the Pledge of Allegiance as well. And we had one young student, actually a member of our Parks Board. He brought his son, and he was like maybe 6 or 8, and he got to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. So show up, you get to do important things. Get put to work, and it's very noticed, and we appreciate all your dedication because you are important people in your community. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Thompson?
I can't compete with those at that end of the table here. They are really busy. I wasn't that busy this month. The only thing unusual I had was a SEDCOR meeting, and it was regarding the homelessness, and it was great. It was a wonderful meeting.
Thank you. Director Evans, see, last but last
to
thing.
balance all that.
Yes, yes.
That's not why we report on things. We're trying to help put a good face on transit in our community. We're all doing our part.
Yes.
Exactly. Did the work session, and then I attended the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. I went to the chamber event with Secretary Richardson. I thought that was an interesting, and I asked him a political question so he could give me a political answer. It was very nice. did Can Do and West Salem Neighborhood Association. Spent some time on the bus. One was with a mom who had 3 children. One was handicapped in a stroller that has to be strapped in, and she supplied bus passes because of the handicap she's able to ride, and she's determined to ride fixed route because she thinks that's the right thing to do. So I was very impressed with her tenacity as a mom with 3 kids in tow. I visited with the drivers, trying to be careful while I'm visiting. I collected food for the Rotary in West Salem, and I helped plan my class of 68 50-year class reunion for this summer. Actually, my wife and I did the pre-function for it last weekend. And then I'm still working on continuing my tour guides on Fridays at the state capitol, where I run into our legislative liaison folks often. I see him over there, even when there's nobody in session. He's walking the halls. And then next week I'm involved with 2 days of outdoor school, teaching the math of Douglas fir trees. So I've been busy.
Yeah, see, all of you are doing a lot of volunteer work besides your duties as transit directors. Again, I think we've reached the end of our meeting. I'd like to say that this is sort of a marathon meeting tonight because last month's meeting was over very
20 minutes?
Yeah, less than an hour.
It was
We had a lot of
It was a record.
yes, we had a lot of things on the agenda, so it isn't always like this. But we appreciate you coming and sitting through it. I know how excited you've been about all of this, and we appreciate you leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance and wish you best in your scouting career. So with that, unless there's something else for the good of the order, the meeting is adjourned.
It actually
Sounds like
wasn't as interesting
Dairy
a
Queen,
meeting
they need to go
last
to Dairy
time,
Yeah.
so.